Hey there, Matt Lentzner from Breakpoint 40, bringing you ideas that helps everybody run their professional services operations and their companies. I have many years now as a software developer. I was a consultant, but I was also developing software. So then I see things that I've learned in software and how that marries up with operations, but I think it applies everywhere. So let's talk about that. There's really two large models of ways to make software. There's something called the Waterfall model, where you have a bunch of meetings, everyone sits around a table, and you write it all down in a giant specification document. You give that to the programmers. They write everything according to your specifications, and then they give you the product back and you turn it on and everyone lives happily ever after. That was the older way of doing things. There's a newer way called Agile. You do it iteratively instead. So the developers go and start to build the very basics of it, then that gets shown, and then if that gets accepted, you go back and build a little more, then you add a feature, etc., and just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That, I would say, is the preferable way to do things now. I think that the iterative approach is the way to go. And they will say things like fail early, like you want to see the problem as quickly as possible. Whereas the waterfall is, we're going to go off and do everything, and then we're going to give the finished product at the end because we did all the work up front to figure everything out so that we don't have to keep making changes all the time. So here's where my opinion comes in. So the waterfall model is pure hubris, that people think that they can figure everything out ahead of time and then design everything. The work comes back and everything all fits together and it's exactly what you wanted. That doesn't work because you don't know what you don't know. Like you don't truly understand the problem until you try to solve it. So you go and you try something and then you start to learn about what is actually the problem that I'm trying to solve. Oftentimes, like what you thought you wanted to do and what you end up doing is completely different. That's just from my experience. But then the waterfall people are like, well, we don't want to do all of that. That's going to take too long. Once again, in my experience, if you try to plan everything out ahead of time, it almost invariably comes back totally wrong, and then you have to go and unravel everything. It's kind of like if you built a house and then you show it to the person in there and they're like, no, the living room is supposed to be in the back of the house, not the front of the house. And you've already put in the floors and you've put in all the drywall and finished everything and the appliances are in and everything. That's a whole bunch of work you have to do to rip everything out. This idea of waterfall is just super wasteful and leads to giant disasters if you didn't do it right. So how does this apply to a consulting company? I mean, that's really what we're interested in. I don't think anybody who's watching this is interested in becoming a computer programmer. What it is when you tackle a problem, and ultimately, like running a company, it almost boils down to how good are your processes. And I'm talking about like the running of the company, right? What's your process for billing? What's your process for getting new customers, etc. So how do you do that? Do you get a big meeting and have everyone talk about, we need a new sales process? Well, let's talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. Go back and each person will work on their little piece of what this process is supposed to be. And we'll all come back and it'll be done. And then we'll implement that process. That sounds a lot like waterfall to me. So the agile way to do a new process is to take your existing process, find a little piece in there and like, what could we do in there that would improve our process? And then you make one change and then you see if that actually improves your process. If it does, then you go back and make another change and then see how that goes and another change, etc. And then you evolve that process over time. A good way to do things is a continuous improvement, making each little improvement as you go, and then over time compounds into something that catapults you ahead of everybody else. That's what I wanted to talk about today. Yes, I want to make continuous improvement, but what does that look like in a company setting? And it's to look at your processes, review it. What's one change that we can make that would make this process better? You don't need to fix everything. Fix the one thing that's the biggest problem, and then make sure that gets integrated and is working smoothly. And then you go back again once that's been solved, and then you find the next one and the next one and the next one. You just keep doing that. And it becomes part of your organizational DNA instead of the project. Okay. I hope that's helpful. All right, I'll see you in the next one. Okay, bye.
This podcast was brought to you by Bazinta. Bazinta is an all-in-one cloud platform for professional service firms that combines time tracking, scheduling, invoicing, project management, and real-time reporting to help teams run operations more efficiently and improve profitability. For more information, click the link below.